What if I told you that one of the absolute biggest, most anticipated superhero projects on the planet might actually be barreling toward a historic financial disaster? I'm talking about the new Supergirl movie. When I first started digging into the data and the overall public sentiment surrounding this massive DC Universe project, I fully expected to find the usual tidal wave of fan excitement. I mean, the studio is pouring hundreds of millions of dollars into a complete franchise reboot. They're laying out a decade-long roadmap that literally carries the weight of thousands of jobs and billions in future revenue. The stakes are just astronomical. But instead of that expected hype, I found something that feels really weird and honestly terrifying for a studio trying to relaunch an entire cinematic universe. The buzz is just dead. Audience excitement appears almost totally non-existent. And outside of a few really bizarre anomalies, there doesn't seem to be any real passionate discussion surrounding this film at all. I really want to understand exactly why this is happening and what it actually means for the future of blockbuster cinema.
To really grasp the sheer scale of this crisis, we've got to look at exactly what's going wrong here. We're looking at a massive box office warning, a totally missing online buzz, the failure of the shared universe connection, this incredibly weird Lobo anomaly, and ultimately, the huge question of whether or not this film can actually be saved. Everything is connected here, and let me tell you, the deeper I dig into this, the more fragile this entire cinematic endeavor begins to look.
So, I want you to ask yourself a seriously difficult question right now. Can you honestly imagine a major tentpole DC movie performing worse than notorious recent disappointments like Black Adam, Black Widow, or even the upcoming Thunderbolts? Because when I look at the current situation surrounding Supergirl, that possibility doesn't seem crazy anymore. Actually, scratch that. It's becoming a very realistic scenario. We have to remember the sheer, brutal financial reality of modern tentpole movies. A film of this massive scale, with crazy production costs and global marketing budgets, requires immense momentum just to break even. We are literally talking about needing to clear $500 million just to stay out of the red. And right now, the early signs aren't just lukewarm, they are chillingly cold.
And that brings me to the absolute most glaring issue I've noticed: the total lack of online buzz. Honestly, the silence here speaks volumes. When I started pulling the metrics, I quickly realized that the absolute deafening quiet across the internet is a massive flashing red flag. In today's landscape, online engagement isn't just some vanity metric anymore, right? It is literally the lifeblood of modern blockbuster marketing. It's the absolute best early indicator I have to tell if audiences are actually planning to leave their couches, buy a ticket, and sit in a theater.
Normally, right about now, I'd be seeing a massive explosion of expected hype. There's usually this crackling energy that just takes over the internet. Fans flood social media with viral discussions. They hunt for Easter eggs in every single teaser frame, and they aggressively debate all these incredibly elaborate crossover theories. It's a hype machine. But when I look at the reality of Supergirl, it is practically a ghost town. The sheer void where that fan energy should be is just staggering. Total silence. Zero significant speculation. No major debates dominating the forums. Just a cold, empty void that makes the silence feel incredibly heavy and ominous.
Now, if this were just some isolated, standalone indie film existing in a vacuum, okay, maybe a slow marketing start would be excusable. But it's not. It is deeply and intricately tied to a massive, highly publicized cinematic universe, and that's what makes this disconnected excitement so incredibly baffling to me. We already know that this story is supposed to connect directly with future projects. The studio has practically been screaming this at us. Superman himself has been highly visible in the marketing push to explicitly remind everyone that these characters breathe the same air. And yet, I am absolutely stunned to see that Superman's presence didn't change a thing. This is where the psychology of modern fandom completely breaks down. Normally, a shared universe connection is the ultimate hype multiplier, right? It creates this massive fear of missing out, where audiences feel they have to buy a ticket just to keep up with the story. But despite knowing full well that Supergirl plays a crucial role in this new narrative, the audience engagement stubbornly refuses to budge. It's like the connective tissue that usually electrifies a fan base has just been severed. But wait, it actually gets weirder. Because there is a tiny bit of hype out there, but it feels completely hijacked. I call this the Lobo anomaly. And honestly, it is the most bizarre piece of evidence I've uncovered so far. Because the rare spark of conversation that does pop up, it's entirely misplaced. When I break down the tiny sliver of online chatter that actually exists, the overwhelming majority is entirely obsessed with one specific character, Lobo. People seem absolutely desperate for his live-action debut, and that hype is completely swallowing the conversation. It is totally eclipsing the title hero herself. The engagement surrounding Supergirl as the lead is distressingly small.
It's like the hype train entirely derailed and went down the wrong track. Think about how crazy that reality is. A supporting character is generating way more conversation than the actual lead. I cannot emphasize enough what a blaring neon red flag this is for a franchise movie. When the audience cares more about a supporting player than the literal hero whose name is printed in giant letters on the theatrical poster, you have a fundamental, foundational marketing crisis. It means the core emotional hook of your protagonist has entirely failed to land with the public, and if that emotional hook is dead, the movie is broken at its very core.
And I didn't just want to rely on my own gut feelings or timeline scrolling. I wanted to understand the actual structural mechanics of this silence, because the data I'm seeing from behind the metrics tells a brutal story. This is a measurable, catastrophic drop in interest being recorded in real time across the internet.
Let me peel back the curtain for a second. When I look at what's happening with content creators who are actively trying to talk about Supergirl right now, the warning signs are undeniably harsh. They are getting totally crushed. We're talking drastically lower reach, incredibly weak engagement from their own core subscribers, and their content is just flat out struggling compared to almost any other superhero topic. And you know how ruthless algorithms are. They only go exactly where the audience's attention is. When the algorithm violently punishes creators for talking about dead topics, those creators abandon the topic to save their channels. That artificially suppresses any organic word of mouth, creating this brutal, self-fulfilling prophecy of total audience apathy.
So with all that terrifying data, I have to step back and ask, can it actually be saved? Because to be fair, the fate of this fragile future isn't permanently sealed in stone just yet. The movie isn't out. There is still a window, however incredibly narrow, to course correct before opening night.
There is a path to redemption, but it's going to take an absolute miracle. The studio desperately needs a perfectly executed sequence of events. First, they need viral trailers. And I don't mean just good trailers. I mean something so spectacular, so emotionally resonant, that it violently shakes the internet awake and forces people to care. Second, they need undeniably stellar reviews that completely shatter this current aura of total apathy. And third, they need overwhelmingly positive, explosive word of mouth on opening weekend. If they can perfectly nail all three of those incredibly difficult steps, public perception could theoretically flip overnight. But look, we have to live in the present reality, not some theoretical best-case scenario. And based purely on the freezing cold data, the totally silent fan base, and the lack of any real cultural footprint, the hype is frozen solid. Right now, the studio is rolling the dice on what looks like one of the riskiest projects imaginable. It's a wildly dangerous gamble. I have to conclude that unless a massive, seismic earthquake occurs in the marketing very, very soon, we are staring directly down the barrel of one of the weakest performing theatrical releases in recent history. The math simply does not lie. Which leaves me with one final, lingering thought for you. Is Supergirl just being drastically underestimated? Like, is this a hidden cinematic gem just waiting to explode and prove all the data and everyone wrong? Or are these glaring neon red warning signs undeniably real? I want you to think deeply about that. Because if this fails, it doesn't just hurt one single movie. The ripple effect could totally dismantle years of planned storytelling. The answer could literally change the entire trajectory of the DC universe forever. So what do you think? Are the warning signs undeniably real?